Hi, it's Janet Huxley here on Color Speak, and today it is my great pleasure to bring you Dr. Mike Belkowski. And did I say that right, Mike?
Spot on.
Perfect. We are going to get educated, all of us today, and I'm including myself in that because today we're talking about red light therapy. And Dr. Mike is a physical therapist who is the founder and CEO of Biolight, and he has a wealth of information for us on that topic. And I'm sure if we had time, many others. But our goal in mind today is your wellness. So I'm pleased to have him on the show. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Mike. So, do you have anything more you want to tell our audience about you?
Well, I mean, we could take a dive into my background if you want, but that story can get lengthy, so I'll let you decide or if you want to go down that rabbit hole. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess just off the top of my mind, Janet, the story began with me for red light therapy 7, 8 years ago, and it's transformed over time the more I've learned um, into a mitochondrial centric mission and story. And red light was the initiator behind that. So I mean, there's a lot to that story, but red light therapy is a huge passion of mine. And as much as I have a company, my true passion is education. So I'm very grateful for you to have me on and just share my story and information with your audience.
That sounds great. Well, as I shared with you earlier, so we're just I guess we label ourselves rather crunchy, although we're not 100%. We're probably 80/20. We watch the seed oils, we drink raw milk, raise my kids on the farm on raw milk, have for a long time been very motivated to live a different lifestyle than the norm. And I just think over the past few years, we look less weird and more. I have more and more people saying, including my own adult kids, hey, I want to live on a farm. I want to have free range chickens and all of the things. So this goes along as part of it. And I just feel like this is so huge, Mike. This is the whole idea of red light therapy and its benefits. I feel like a lot of people just are so unaware. And so I'm excited to be able to get the information out. And so we'll start about, okay, I know we're going to have a definition on the microchondria and mitochondria, and we're going to have to like maybe go back to science class a little bit. And then I want you to tell me about red light therapy, methylene blue, and C something that
C6
there you go, that work all
carbon
together.
6.
So
Yeah.
let's just start at the beginning. What is mitochondria, the powerhouse, and how does that work in our bodies and bring in the whole red light therapy and why that's important?
Yeah, so I mean that's probably a good order of operation. Most people start with red light therapy, but then I kind of bring it back and like let's go to the foundation, which is the mitochondria. And you kind of slipped up, but it's funny because one of my customers gave me the nickname mitochondria because
That is great. I love it.
but
See, that's what
anyway,
I was thinking.
right. So I'll try not to go too sciencey or too nerdy, but it is still you have to understand why the mitochondria, why do we care about them? Like what do they have to do with our health and wellness? And then that'll explain why and how red light therapy and then methylene blue and carbon 60 can really help with so many things. Because on the face of it, when you hear red light therapy offhand or you read someone's testimonial or you hear from an influencer, like the dozens and dozens of things that red light therapy can help with, it starts to sound like a snake oil pitch or like it's too good to be true. So again, the mitochondria is where the rubber meets the proverbial road. So the mitochondria, they produce upwards of 95% of all of the energy in our body. And the mitochondria are inside of our cells. So we're even going deeper than just the cellular level. They're inside of the cells. And there can be dozens, there can be hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of mitochondria per cell, depending on how energy intensive that cell is, which depends on what tissue and what organ it is. So, for example, the brain, by far the most mitochondrial dense tissue in the body, which everyone knows like how much energy the brain requires. And so then you have to think about, okay, what are other tissues or organs that require a lot of energy? The heart, liver, skeletal muscle, even our eyeballs. All of those are very mitochondrial dense tissues because again, they require lots of energy just to carry out their daily activities. So when we think about root cause, root um, foundational level healing, Like, what is the root cause of Alzheimer's? What is the root cause of IBS? What is the root cause of this thyroid issue I'm having? Again, we have to go back to this concept of mitochondria are inside of the cell. Cells are inside of tissues. Tissues make up organs. Organs make up systems like the nervous system, and then systems make up our body. So we don't get diagnosed for the most part until there's maybe towards the back end of a tissue issue, but certainly an organ issue. You have pancreatitis. You have a cardiovascular issue. Your heart is not working right. Your brain is not functioning correctly. But the precipitating factor or the beginning or the foundational root cause issue is mitochondrial dysfunction. So again, from a bioenergetic perspective, the more energy you produce per cell, the healthier you're going to be. That's just a fact. Said another way, the less energy you produce per cell, the more disease state you're going to accumulate, the more you're going to go towards cancer, if you will.
Hmm.
So again, with the mitochondria producing upwards of 95% of all energy in the body, that kind of tells the story of, okay, we need to be focusing a lot of our health and wellness on these little organelles, which are the mitochondria, because they just based on that fact alone, the bioenergetic macro perspective, they hold a lot of our fate as far as our health, our wellness, our longevity, and our health span. So anything you do, any decision you make throughout the day, whether it's your health and careness regimen, or whether it's what time you go to sleep, or how stressed you get, or what types of and qualities of food you eat, every single decision you make impacts your mitochondria for better or worse. So it's this fork in the road. And so that's where a lot of these things we're talking about, we'll talk about today, but even other things like hydrogen rich water, grounding, just getting out in full spectrum sunlight, nature, anything that decreases stress. So gratitude, journaling, meditation, all of those positively impact the mitochondria. On the flip side, things that help the mitochondria, or sorry, the things that are a detriment to the mitochondria, I think are equally, if not more important than adding these beneficial things like red light therapy and methylene blue and C60. So we have to ask, what causes mitochondrial dysfunction? Because maybe that's more important.
Hmm,
Well, I
good
already covered
point.
one of them with stress, but the big one in our modern day, or two of them in our modern day world, is we spend more and more time indoors, which means we're less and less outdoors. So you farmers have it best, quite honestly, because you're getting more exposure to sunlight than anyone else. And then secondarily, we're inundated and bombarded and essentially living in an ocean of non-native EMFs. 5G, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all these computers, they're hooked up to some type of non-native EMF. And what that does at a very basic level is it leads to mitochondrial dysfunction. So then we have to think of these EMF mitigating strategies. So like what can I have around me, around my computer area to mitigate these EMFs to thus help my mitochondrial function. So these are just some of the things.
Oh, yeah, that's so great. And I'm thinking already, sorry to interrupt. I'm thinking, oh, thank God I have these plants around me. But
Yeah.
here's the thing. Yeah, and I have to say this right off the bat so that I don't forget, but for years I've wondered, it doesn't make sense to me that the narrative is slather all these chemicals all over your body and stay out of the light when the light makes us feel so good. And summertime rolls around here, and I'm not from this area, Kansas City. I'm from San Diego, so I grew up being outdoors, being in the sun. We were always outdoors. And then I guess it was about my 15th year in here when I was slammed and I just hit a brick wall and I just had a complete meltdown. And come to find out, I was vitamin D deficient, the whole 9 yards. And that's when I became a crusader. Basically, that was 2014 for understanding the benefits for being outdoors and sort of started the narrative and started like the discussion, and people weren't willing to hear it. Now I think we are. And so that lends to red light therapy and all of that. So take it away. That's it to me is so
Yeah.
fascinating. Oh, I did have a question. So when you
Sure.
were talking about every single cell has a different number of see, I'm going to keep saying it, even though I've written it down a million times,
Yeah.
mitochondria,
Yeah.
um, is that dependent wholly upon that specific organ's function or that tissue's function? Okay. So
Exactly. Yep.
and it varies depending upon the level of health, and the more the better.
Um,
Or is it just oxygen intake at that point? which I know we'll probably get.
So, I mean, that's a multifactorial question. More is theoretically better, but also keep in mind this is kind of the juxtaposition, or this is where the story gets a little thicker with mitochondria. So, yes, they produce the vast majority of energy in our body. Yes, the more energy intensive your the cell is, depending on the tissue and organ is. Um, but when we have mitochondrial dysfunction, that sets the stage for other processes going haywire. Because just like we have what's called autophagy for our cells, which means basically garbage cleanup, get rid of the dysfunctional cells, recycle them so we can build new healthy cells. Because if you leave those dysfunctional cells lying dormant and kind of in the corner, so to speak, they become zombie cells. They're called senescent cells, and those are pro-inflammatory. So again, if we can keep that autophagy going for our cells, garbage cleanup, those zombie cells will not be there. That's another way to remove inflammation. So that exact same concept applies to the mitochondria. It's called mitophagy. Same thing. If we have too many dysfunctional mitochondria just laying around, not getting recycled and cleaned up, then those are going to propagate themselves and they're going to replicate more dysfunctional mitochondria, and that can just self-propagate itself to a larger proportion of dysfunctional mitochondria to functioning mitochondria. That leads to a dysfunctional cell, that leads to a dysfunctional tissue, and that's kind of part of the snowball effect is a lack of a garbage cleanup. And that's where I'm saying more is not better because quality over quantity, I guess. But you do want a quantity as well. Um, so mitochondria, where do we want to go from here?
So for most people
Yeah.
that really understand mitochondria, perhaps they're coming into it now, they probably want to fast get to what is the benefit of
hmm
red light therapy and how does that affect my daily wellness and how I'm feeling as it relates to mitochondria.
Yeah. So the reason why red light therapy is um, directly attached to mitochondrial function is because the mitochondria respond specifically to only two wavelengths of light. They can respond to others indirectly, but directly and most powerfully are the red visible wavelength. So that red light, just like a red stoplight, technically could be a red light therapy because it's producing red wavelengths. Um, and then the invisible near infrared light. So those two spectra of wavelengths, red and near infrared, do the exact same thing physiologically. They're anti-inflammatory, they're pro-circulatory, boost mitochondrial function, and much more. They do the exact same thing, just at different depths in the body. So red light, since it's a little shorter, doesn't penetrate any deeper than the skin. So that's why you see these red light face masks and people treating their skin with that beautiful red light. That's why. Whereas if you're treating anything deeper than the skin, you must include near infrared. So treating the brain, treating your gut, treating your muscles, tendons, ligaments, that kind of a thing. You must incorporate this invisible light near infrared because it just penetrates deeper, does the same thing as red light.
Hmm.
So what red light therapy, so that's what red light therapy is comprised of, those two wavelengths. And again, they have an effect on the mitochondria because of this chromophore, which is it accepts light, responds to that red and near infrared light. Essentially, it allows oxygen into the mitochondria to thus produce ATP, that token of energy. And secondarily, what doesn't get talked about nearly at all is it also produces, along with ATP, is biological water or this fourth phase water, if people have heard of that. Um,
Are you talking about like in a red light sauna? Or is
I'm
you're
talking
talking
about
about the
inside your
product?
body.
Okay, okay, I gotcha.
So, for example, when I was talking about the dastardly effects of non-native EMFs, it's tantamount to cooking our bodies in a microwave. So when you put a steak in the microwave and you heat it up and you quote unquote cook it, you're really just dehydrating the meat. You're removing the electrons from the meat, and the water, I should say, from the meat. Non-native EMFs, this Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, 5G, all this stuff is essentially microwaves that we're sitting in and just constantly surrounded by, and it's dehydrating us because it's creating mitochondrial dysfunction. So dysfunctional mitochondria not only produces less energy, it produces less water. And if you look at a hydrated brain versus a dehydrated brain, no difference. The volume of the brain and the size of the brain is drastically smaller in a dehydrated brain. And again, the brain is the most mitochondrial dense tissue in the body. So if there's mitochondrial dysfunction, which leads to less energy and less water, you're literally going to have a dehydrated, shrunken brain. relatively speaking. So I think if people saw that image, it would speak volumes. So what is red light therapy doing? Again, it's
Hmm.
improving mitochondrial function, which is improving energy. Um, and again, I don't want to get too deep in the science, but it's a story of electrons. Anything we do should be, from a health and wellness perspective, should be gaining electrons because that electrons run through the mitochondria to produce ATP in water. So you have a dearth or a lack of electrons, and by electrons, we get electrons from food. We get electrons from full spectrum sunlight. We get electrons from grounding. We get electrons from hydrogen-rich water. Um, but when we're not connected to Earth, when we're not outside and or getting red light therapy, and we're not making high quality food choices like things that were grown in the sun, plants,
Yeah.
then we're losing out on those electrons, and thus our mitochondria aren't producing enough energy. People get brain fog. People just have overall low energy. People are um, riddled with inflammation because inflammation is simply a lack of electrons. So anything that is quote unquote anti-inflammatory is simply bringing electrons into the situation to reduce the acidity in your body and thus reduce the inflammation. So that's why red light therapy is anti-inflammatory.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt, but I have so many questions.
Yeah, yeah, please.
So basically, what you're saying is we can go outside and we can obtain great red light therapy. And I know that it's been said that especially in what we call first light, the first 45 minutes of the day when we're not dealing with any harmful elements that may be incorporated into that red light therapy. But if we can't, and we do still benefit by being outside and frequently, but we can enhance our wellness by specifically targeting areas of concern with red light therapy that takes all the other junk out and focuses on getting deep into the tissue, into the cells where the mitochondria live. And there is a differentiation between just simple red light and the red light basically that we can't see. But both of those are incorporated into your standard, red light therapy modules. Is that right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I
Because
mean, they'll
my next question is, how do you know it's the right thing? Like, I mean, and how does it, I know specifically what you've said in another, I just want to like kind of marinate in this too. What you're basically saying is the red light is able to penetrate the mitochondria in a way that extracts the gases that are harmful out, pumps it full of oxygen. And maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse because I don't know that we necessarily got to that part yet. But it's not only for those just checking in, I'm just thinking it's measurable. I mean, we know this scientifically. So yeah, take it from there. Just
as far as
recapping.
as far as red light
And
therapy's impact on the mitochondria,
yeah,
or
like how like if somebody's listening in and they're going, okay, so my mitochondria is messed up and clearly, I mean, I mean, it seems very dismal to be honest when you hear about all of the stuff that's coming at us because we're most of us on our computers.
hmm
Most of us not outside like we need to be. How do we, and I love that you brought that up because I don't think I've heard anybody talk about the what we're dealing with. In other words, here are the benefits, and red light therapy does X, Y, and Z. But if we don't address this situation too, probably preventative is every bit as important as, being proactive.
100%.
Prevention is every bit as important as taking the necessary steps to correct the issues. So how do we start? And I guess yeah, I mean like for someone like me who I and you, I would assume we're all on the computers. So yeah, take it from there. What's our first step?
Well, I think you kind of alluded to it when I was talking about all these things that we need to be concerned about that are causing dysfunction. Because if we're all con if we're just focused on improving mitochondrial function, but we're allowing the dysfunctional things to continue to occur, it's like having one foot on the pedal to improve, but one foot on the brake because we're combating all these other things. So I think it's equally, if not more important, to begin by alleviating the issues or taking measures to mitigate the things causing mitochondrial dysfunction or understanding those. And then the cherry on top is like all the stuff that further improves mitochondrial function. Doing both at the same time, but I'm just saying be mindful that there's two sides to the story. Um, Meaning like if you do start red light therapy, but you're also doing things to mitigate non-native EMFs. You're getting outside more. You're more mindful of your circadian rhythm when you wake up, when you go to sleep, stress levels. If you do that in tandem with red light therapy and all these other things, those are only going to work more powerfully for you versus two steps forward, one step back kind of mantra. But you see these glasses I have on, they kind of have a yellow tint. Like I don't need glasses. My eyes have great vision, but this is because I have these bright lights. We have the blue lights from the screen. Blue lights cause an increase in cortisol, which inhibits melatonin production. So I have a pair that's actually more amber orange for at night because that blocks almost all blue light. Because that's a huge story as well from a circadian biology perspective, which directly ties to your overall mitochondrial function. So when I'm in front of computer screens, or at night watching TV or a phone or whatever, I always have blue light blocking glasses on. I think that is paramount, or maybe even step one before red light therapy, because if you're not um, improving the signals through your eyes, which then get to your into your brain, your pineal gland, your hypothalamus, and all that, which then sends signals to your entire body. Um, then again, that's another aspect of health and wellness that is very underappreciated or talked about that is extremely foundational in this modern world. Our parents and our great grandparents didn't have to worry about it because we weren't surrounded by all this technology or all this light. But that's just another thing to consider.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. So whenever I get my glasses, I always do the blue light blocking or whatever
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I know that I need that, but they don't look like yours. Do they have to be that color?
Compared to transparent, yeah, these are going to be more, they're going to block more for sure. They have to. Like if
Okay.
they're transparent, they're going to block less. They're going to block some, but they're going to block less.
Mhm.
Um, Also keep in mind, like blue light is getting demonized in this day and age because of blue light is in all of our screens. They're on cell phones, tablets, TV, everywhere, blue lights. And again, that raises cortisol levels, which is great in the morning. We want to be aroused and wake up via blue light that is from the sunlight. But when the sun starts to go down and it starts to get dark, yet we're still surrounded by these fluorescent lights and or these blue lit screens, we're sending a signal to our brain that it's still the middle of the day. So it's going to continue to produce cortisol, which inherently inhibits melatonin production, which of course that's what we want to go to sleep.
Mhm.
So that's a whole other conversation for circadian biology that we could go into, but I just want to bring it up because again, it's one of the simplest things to do. Go find a quality pair of blue light blocking glasses. The yellow ones are more for during the day. The orange ones, again, are for when the sun goes down or before the sun comes up to block all blue light. And another thing to consider is blue light technology. If you're constantly looking at it, that blue light will elongate your eye, which will then that's a precipitating factor for myopia, which is then one step or a couple steps before macular degeneration. So blocking blue light is not just for the circadian thing, although that's foundationally important, but it's also for the physiological and physical aspects of your eyeball and vision itself. Um,
Hmm.
so from a and again, our eyes are one of the most mitochondrial dense tissues. So things like red light therapy, very powerful when used correctly for the eye. Methylene blue, very powerful for the eye because our eyes are exposed to oxygen, thus they can get a lot of oxidative stress. Thus, you need things that are going to minimize that oxidative stress to maintain the health. And that goes for all tissues. That's what especially C60 is good at is sequestering and eliminating oxidative stress, which is tied to virtually every health condition and cancer in the world. Like it almost all begins with inflammation and oxidative stress. Um,
Okay, well,
and
Mike, let me ask you. So, maybe we come back to this once you fully explain the red light therapy. But are you differentiating methylene blue from your typical blue? Like, what is methylene blue as differentiated from the blue that's kind of wreaking havoc at night that we shouldn't be looking at?
so blue light from the screens, methylene blue is something you consume orally.
Okay.
It's a synthetic dye, and that's a whole other story. We can get into that in a little bit. But methylene blue is something you consume that improves your mitochondrial function systemically, especially your brain. The blue light I'm talking about is what is emitted from your screens, and then your eyes perceive that then sets increases cortisol levels, inhibits melatonin, all that stuff. So blue light is demonized, but there's also blue light in the sun. That's what I was saying. We wake up, we see the sunlight. That blue light is going to spike our cortisol, which we want in the morning. But then throughout the rest of the day, we want it dwindling down, down, down until the evening when we fall asleep and we want that melatonin to go up. Um,
Reminds me to ask you when we get to this part about the saunas and red light.
yes.
Saunas offer an option to do red light therapy and other lights like blue light in conjunction, which is supposed to help skin conditions.
Mhm.
So I want to make sure that I hit on that. But let's just backing up a little bit. So the red light therapy is, I love that you brought the glasses into because these are things that we don't know, right? We don't know what we don't know. And
Yep.
all I can say is I take it extremely personally because I just think, well, in 2020, I started back to the news business again. I had taken some time off to raise my family. And then I just kept getting more stressed and more stressed and more stressed. And of course, the news is a beast in and of itself. But I didn't realize that until my neck started hurting terribly. I had never had anything like that before. And I would literally cry. I mean, I drove down to a relative's house in Nashville and I sat in her kitchen just crying until she brought something out and said, I really think she had me put an ice pack on and said, I really think you need to find a chiropractor. I had never been. And then come to find out, he was asking me questions like, okay, so you're on your computer a lot? I had no idea as I was because we just didn't know.
Yep.
And so being on the computer and being on my phone and all of that is just so detrimental to one's health. So I love that you've brought up, what you think about, like I live for summers when I can get back outside again, because even when I'm feeling really crappy, I think, oh, just another month, just another month. We're into March now. It's gonna
We're
get
getting
better.
close.
Yeah, we're getting close. The glasses help, all of these things mitigated by the aforementioned that you've brought to our attention. Now, what does red light therapy do for us? And what
Yeah.
specifically is it for those who've never experienced it?
Yeah, and just to wrap up the mitochondrial conversation, I don't think I mentioned this, but like upwards of 80% of modern diseases are directly tied to mitochondrial dysfunction. So the rest is like basically nuclear DNA, meaning like the DNA that for generations people thought they were just like they're strapped to that blueprint, that DNA, like that was their fate. Well, we've learned over the most recent handful of decades that through epigenetics, through your daily habits, your health habits, for better or worse, those predominantly dictate your latter decades diseases or lack thereof. And it's not decided by the DNA for most people. There's a small percentage where the DNA does play a significant role, but for most of us, and this should be liberating and enthralling, is uh, the mitochondrial dysfunction is something that's completely reversible, preventable, mitigatable, and that's where red light therapy comes in. It's one of the most powerful strategies to improve mitochondrial function and or prevent or mitigate or reverse mitochondrial dysfunction, which will then lead to the prevention, reversal, and or mitigation of all of these modern diseases. And I'm talking Alzheimer's, anything that you've read about with red light therapy, um, GI, thyroid, brain, skin. Again, if it has mitochondria and you can get light to it, red or near infrared light to it, you're going to have a positive effect. Also has to be in the correct dosage, more or less. Um,
Well, that's the question of the hour. And also the positions, so when I bought my first red light about a year ago, because my daughter had one and it just had a clip function on it. And it was like this big and you clipped it to something. Well, it was really so ineffective because where do you clip it? And then if you don't clip it because you don't have a surface you can clip it to, well, how are you placing it? And then exactly, where does it need to be and all of those things. It's just you can talk about it. I think for a lot of people watching, they might think, okay, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. So how do I position it and where and for how long? And again, it gets back to how do you know that it's the right red light therapy and not just a red light?
what do you mean by that last question?
So you mentioned there's infrared light that we can't see, and then
Mhm.
there's red light like we can see when we stop at a stop sign or a
Yeah.
stoplight. And I've heard people say before, oh, this was ineffective. Well, how is that? How do you know whether a red light is effective or not? And how do you know if it has the right composition in it? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
These
this is
are
going
all
to be
layperson questions, you
this is
know.
going to be a long answer.
Oh
So
no.
so buckle up. No, but this is what I've been trying to tackle for a couple of years now because when I got into the red light therapy space in early 2019, and I feel like it's still propagated today, is a lot of misinformation um, around how to use red light therapy. So you're asking all of the right questions, and I don't see many people, influencers or companies, providing the correct education outside of Biolight. And I know that's biased, but that's I've
Mhm.
done with Biolight what I've done because I'm looking at and what's going on in the landscape of red light therapy or otherwise, and it's like no one's providing the right education because everyone is essentially saying use red light therapy for 20 to 30 minutes every single day. That's the protocol,
But you have
which
to start out, you have to build into that,
all
right?
just from the face of it, that doesn't make sense because different devices have different
Right.
power of light. So if a light is much weaker than this strong powered panel, how can we possibly say 20 to 30 minutes a day? What if one person is treating their skin, which is notoriously a low dosage treatment, versus someone who's treating their brain, which is notoriously a high dosage treatment,
Mm.
yet the overarching um, colloquial protocol is 20 to 30 minutes every single day. So all of that to say, years ago when I was reading through all of the red light therapy research, it dawned on me that this needs to be a little more individualized for all the reasons I just mentioned. Different products have different powers and people are trying to treat different things. So how can we put a blanketed duration on people's treatment? And so that's why I answered my last question is it depends on the dosage. And this is where it gets I don't want to get too stuck in the weeds here, but again, this is kind of important like the mitochondria were. So even within Biolight, we have a couple of handheld devices. We have several different panels. Each one of those devices, even though we're the same company, they all have different light irradiances. So if Janet, if you're trying to treat, I don't know, general health and wellness, let's say, I don't know, or your skin, you would want to know what the dosage was required to treat your skin effectively with red light therapy. The duration of your treatment is going to change depending on the strength of your device. It's no different than the closer you are to the sun, the hotter it is, the further you are away, the colder it is. You can alter the strength of the device by how close or how far away you are from the source of the light. I mean, that just makes sense
Right.
inherently. So, I mean, that's another factor that's thrown in there with this 20 to 30 minutes a day thing that doesn't make sense. So last year I took the previous year before that to look over all the research, find all of the it's called photobiomodulation, light that affects your biology. Um, and I found all of the photobiomodulation research that had positive results. And then of those studies that had positive results, and we're talking 10,000 plus articles of photobiomodulation, and it's just growing by leaps and bounds year by year. And I took the effective results and the ones that listed the dosage, because not all of them list the dosage. That's a problem with red light therapy research is the consistency of listing all these metrics. So I took the ones that had effective results, and from the effective results, the listed dosages, and I created this compendium of a couple hundred conditions crossing all different types of health maladies. And it's in this Excel sheet that's part of this ebook that I've written, and it's in its fifth edition, meaning I update this ebook every year. And the most recent edition has this protocol ecosystem, which essentially allows Janet, anyone with any device, it doesn't have to be a BioLite device, with any device to effectively and easily produce a protocol, again, based on the device they have, regardless of company, and based on what they're trying to treat. So I've created this very nuanced way to answer all of your questions once you understand how to use the system. So there's a calculator on the BioLite website anyone and everyone can use for free. If you go to the BioLite website, which is biolight.shop, not .com, biolight.shop, there's a tab that says protocols. Click that, and you're going to see this calculator where you only have to plug in two things. The first is the light irradiance, which essentially just means the strength of the light that you're using, whether it's laser, LED, whatever, and that's measured in milliwatts per centimeter squared. And this issue of light irradiance, Janet, gets us into the issue of third-party testing, which I'm also very passionate about. Um, Because if your device is not third-party tested, which over 95, 98% of the devices on the market are not third-party tested, in all likelihood, the light irradiance that the product has on the product page is grossly over embellished, meaning it's producing less than it says it is. So, and this has been verified by other people that have done individual third-party testing themselves on products across the market. So, for example, they may list their panel at 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared, but in reality, it's putting out 80 or 70. Some people are seeing their panels put out 150, 180, 200 plus, which is asinine for a panel. That's like cooking yourself if it was legitimately putting that out. But again, those panels are actually putting out something in the 80s, 70s, or 60s. So panels on the market or all devices on the market that are not third-party tested, their light irradiances are anywhere from 40 to 200%, producing 40% to 200% less light power than they say they are. So just from an integrity and morality standpoint, that's horrendous. It's no different than the supplement industry where you don't know really what you're getting unless it's been verified or third-party tested. So that's why in early 2023, I mandated for my company, Biolight, that we third-party test all of our products, whether it's an oral device or a handheld device or a panel, or even our red light therapy cupping system. All of those are third-party tested to verify, and so that you, the consumer, know exactly what you're getting. So then back to this calculator page again to produce an effective protocol so that you, Janet, know how to use your device for treating X skin condition. You only plug in two things. The first thing is that light irradiance. And the reason I went on that whole tirade about light irradiance is because while that's a variable you have to plug in, just know that it's likely not an accurate measurement if it's from a different company, if you know what I'm saying. So you're kind of building a protocol on faulty information. But regardless, you plug that in the light irradiance, hold on, and then the second variable is that dosage. And again, that's that Excel sheet that I talked about where there's a couple hundred conditions. You, Janet, you would go to this Excel file sheet, you would scroll down and look for the condition that most resembles what you want to treat. And then in that column or in that row, I should say, there's going to be a column for dosages. So for skin, maybe it's 2 or 3 joules per centimeter squared. You'd plug that 2 to 3, whatever that number is. Let's say it's 2. You plug that into the calculator, and then the calculator is going to spit out the duration for you. So then you, Janet, know exactly with the device you own how long your treatment has to be to get this effective treatment for skin. But it could run the gamut for any condition that's listed on that Excel sheet. And again, there's a couple hundred, and it's growing.
It sounds though, Mike, that if it's not been third party tested, the point is moot.
I
Because
don't
you
want
already
to say the
know,
point is
right?
new,
Is
but
that what?
like kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
maybe through this conversation, you could almost guesstimate, okay, this company is saying it's 100, and based on what Mike is saying, and I could send you the link to share with your audience to show there's a whole list or there's a whole blog about this actually written by someone else that's been out for a couple of years, and I always refer to this. Um, Maybe you just guesstimate and you reduce the light ratings by 20 or 30%, and then you're probably closer in the ballpark. So I think maybe that's kind of like the hack for now. But my hope is that I was hoping Biolight could set the standard, like third party tests. People would see that and have an appreciation for what that meant. And then you go to these other companies and it's like, hey, do you have third party testing for your devices? And hopefully they get enough of those questions that they themselves begin to do third party testing. Because at the end of the day, what I want is for the consumer to go from company to company, be able to compare product to product as apples to apples. Because right now it's like comparing apples to chainsaws or something. I don't know. Like there's just no comparison because one is verified third party testing, the other is not. Um, and so hopefully there's going to be a movement forward. And I've talked to a lot of people like photobiomodulation researchers. I just talked to a gentleman this morning who has, he said, arguably one of the bigger red light therapy clinics in the world. He's up in Canada, and he and I had a fun conversation. And we were talking about this whole third party testing thing and going back and forth about it. And it's a huge issue that again, there's no regulation, just like the supplement industry. So no one really, no agency is going to come in and mandate it. Each company on their own is going to have to take it upon themselves and figure out if they want to be transparent or not, or pay the money to be transparent. Because again, it's not free to get your devices third party tested unless you have the equipment and the know-how. But to your point, Janet, yes, it's kind of is the reality of the red light therapy space right now. So that's why I love being able to share it, is just so people are aware of that. And another caveat I want to put in here, Janet, is like I know I'm getting deep in the weeds here. There's a reason for that, and I think we all understand that. But I don't want to scare people away from thinking, oh, red light therapy is way too complex, or like there's all these weird steps. I don't want to have to do that. I think at the end of the day, just get a product and just consistently expose yourself to it. Be intuitive with how much you expose yourself to it, meaning, I mean, don't do it for hours. Um, but like a lot of the treatments are going to be legitimately around 5 minutes or so. Certainly 10 minutes or lower, depending on what you're treating, but 20 to 30 minutes is crazy high unless you have some of these devices that are very low powered. Um, exposures, you could have a panel on in your room, like in your bedroom or in your living room. Just have it off in sitting on the coffee table like 5 or 10 feet away. Maybe it's just for ambiance, but especially at night, your eyes are going to pick up that red light signal and appreciate it. Red light's the only visible wavelength that does not inhibit melatonin production, whereas all the others, orange, green, blue, violet, they all inhibit melatonin production, but red light does not. So red light is a great choice to have on at night when the sun goes down. I know a lot of people that have just like red light flashlights, or like they have just red lights in their house from the when the sun goes down, because it's very soothing for your eyes and for your biology, and it doesn't inhibit or cause your cortisol to spike. But all that to say, I think people should just get devices, try it on yourself. Um, of course, like I just said, you could try the protocol calculator, kind of toy around with that if you want to be very specific. But even just doing 5 to 10 minutes most days of the week, every day is not necessary. In fact, that's probably too much. Most days of the week, just be intuitive, and I think you'll probably see positive results, because just like there's the concept of malnutrition, the fact that we're all out of the sunlight way more than our ancestors used to be, probably our grandparents for sure and beyond. Um, there's a new term called malillumination. So not only is there a lack of sunlight we're being exposed to, but we're also compounding that by being surrounded by this non-native light, this blue, bright white and blue light, which is like we're doing a double whammy on our biology by not getting the nutrition from the sun, and instead we're getting the malnutrition from the this fake light, so to speak.
Well, my goodness, I have so many questions, and I guess that's why in my excitement I started to interrupt you a little while ago. So I want to circle back around to the real benefits that we know physically, other than the cell level benefits. But first, I wanted to ask, and I think you've just alluded to this, is there any way to harm oneself by using red light therapy?
I mean, you would have to try pretty hard. There's no contraindications to red light therapy, and that's coming directly from Dr. Michael Hamblin, who's out of the University of Harvard, considered by far one of the top photobiomodulation experts in the world. And that's what he said. There's no contraindications. Some precautions would be a actively pregnant woman or an active cancer site, both of which are not, again, they're not negative consequences per se. There's just no research on what happens if um, a woman irradiates her womb when she has a child or she's about to bear a child. You could create a superhuman. We don't know, but that's the thing. Err on the side of caution. If you're pregnant, um, do red light therapy on other spots of your body, just not directly where the fetus is. And then same thing with cancer, except we actually have research on cancer where some research is showing it's very effective for eradicating or getting rid of cancer cells. And
Yeah.
then there's other research showing, well, you may improve energy production, you may improve X, Y, and Z. So you actually might progress the cancer. So do your research. And it's kind of this thing where it's on the fence where it can be helpful, maybe it won't be helpful. So that's why it's a precaution, not a contraindication. But otherwise, to your point, red light therapy is extremely safe. The only other thing I'd throw out there is for anyone doing a mitochondrial intensive modality for the first time, you could get a detox reaction, which again, malaise, headache, nausea, very light, but it could happen. And again, that's a detox response. So the more you do the red light therapy, you'll break out of that those side effects or those sensations. And on the other side, you'll be healed. You'll be getting more energy. You'll feel more vibrant, better sleep, better energy, lower pain. Same thing with like methylene blue or C60, because those are other things that are very powerful for the mitochondria. So the first time or two or three or handful of times that you're doing any of these modalities or adjuvants or supplements, you may get that detox reaction, which if you understand what's going on, even though it doesn't feel pleasant, that should be a positive thing in your mind because that's a healing response. You're improving, you're moving in the right direction. So just continue, be consistent with it, and it should those sensations should fall off the map, and then you're just left with the vibrancy and the energy.
That's fascinating to me. Okay, so because I feel like maybe I've had some headaches, but I coupled that with sauna, so that's what I wanted to lead into. Tell me about red light therapy in conjunction with the sauna experience.
Yeah, so for the longest time, I thought combining both from a biohacking perspective, it's like, see how many things we can stack at once to kill a couple birds with one stone. Um, so it made sense to incorporate red light therapy with the sauna until I had Dr. Praveen Irani, who's another esteemed photobiomodulation researcher out of the University of Buffalo. So I have him on about once a year, and we just kind of talk shop about red light therapy research, what's new. And I think it was the summer of 23 that he um, told me and my audience that you do not want to combine red light therapy in the sauna because the heat from the sauna inhibits the benefits you would otherwise get from the red light therapy. So there's no damage being done. You're just not receiving the red light therapy benefits. So separate them. Um, and really that kind of just speaks to not only the sauna, but like if you're in a hot environment, like I don't know if you're like in a hot house or like you just got done with an intense workout, allow your body to cool off, then do the red light therapy because it's heat of any type that's going to inhibit the benefits. But again, all these sauna companies are trying to incorporate these red light therapy lights or these panels into the sauna, which again makes sense until you know the information that the heat is actually inhibiting those red light therapy benefits.
So to me, this is part of my question list because I had questions like best time of day to use and what about after exercising? And I take a Pilates class with a couple of my daughters. We go in for exercise a couple days a week, and they've often suggested, well, let's do sauna afterward. And I always think that seems so counterintuitive. I mean, for me in my body, I have just worked out, I have just sweat. Now I need to calm down. I need to drink water. I don't need to go straight over to a hot sauna and sit in red
Right.
light. And so what you're saying just confirms what I knew sort of innately, I guess. Um, and then so that's one of my questions. So clearly you don't want to do them about the same time. You want to take your experience, your red light experience, separate and have that experience separate and apart from exercise.
Correct.
Okay,
Not
beautiful.
from exercise, from the sauna specifically.
We're sweating, right?
No, it's the heat of the tissue. So, like, for
Okay.
example, I have a stationary bike in my basement. I have a tabletop panel, and I'm always doing irradiating my torso, my shirt off. So I'm irradiating my torso with a near infrared light because there's wonderful research showing that this is years and years ago, but females on stationary bikes, some of them were irradiated by or exposed to near infrared light. The others were not. They did the exact same, stationary cycle exercise. The ones that were irradiated by the near infrared light lost 400% more fat. So it's like, okay, there's something here with the near infrared light. Um, so it's not the sweating, because that's kind of like an internal thing. It's more the external. And again, like your internal heat shouldn't get to the temperature that a sauna can, or else you'd be like in a fever plus.
Right.
Um, so it's more so the external environment, the heat of the superficial tissue that is inhibiting those red light therapy benefits. So exercise actually is a wonderful fasted exercise while being exposed to red light therapy is one of the better fat loss, weight loss techniques out there.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is we should get red lights and position them near our treadmills and
Yes,
so forth. Okay.
definitely.
Wow. And so then again, it gets back to looking at your calculator to know how closely we need to place those lights and making sure that we determine what the wattage is on the lights to make sure they're sufficient. According.
So a couple things there you bring up. The distance is predicated or dictated by the light irradiance measurement. So a light irradiance measurement has to be measured at a certain distance, right? Because like I was saying before, the closer you get, the stronger or the higher the light irradiance, the farther away, the lower it gets. So any like for example, if you if you go to the calculator page and you scroll a little underneath it, you'll actually see all of the third-party testing results of all of the Biolight products. And so you can see all of the different milliwatts per centimeter squared. And they're going to have the distances for each individual measurement. Most of them are at 6 inches, and that's just been like the industry standard for a long time. But for example, we have like a it's like a sleeping bag product. So that's going to be basically skin contact. So we had that light irradiance at 0 inches. Another one, we have a handheld device, and I know for some treatments, you're going to want to put that device like straight on your body, whether it's your gut or like straight on your forehead for the brain, but also at 6 inches or so, like for other types of treatments. So and that device is called the Shine. So we have, I believe, light irradiance measurements for 0 and 6 inches. So whatever light irradiance measurement you're plugging into that calculator is already giving you the distance based on, in all the products on the market, excuse me, should say like light irradiance at 6 inches, light irradiance at 12 inches. So the description should tell you what the distance is. So whatever you're plugging into the calculator is already giving you the distance, and then that's going to spit out the duration.
So the distance, if it's missing on any product we purchase outside of
Oof.
Biolight, obviously, that's a red flag right there that we're in the wrong place. We have the wrong instrument in our hands.
Yeah, I mean, that should be very transparent. There's no reason to not say what the distance is. If they're just saying our product is 100 milliwatts per centimeter squared, then we'll ask the company at what distance. But yeah, the fact that it's not even being listed is kind of odd.
Okay. Yeah,
But
I
most
feel
things do
like
have
my
the distance listed.
I feel like my questions for you, Mike, are a little bit erratic just because there's so much information and there's so much that I've been doing right and wrong. And then I didn't share with you earlier, my red light completely fell apart. And I didn't have other people using it or kids using it or what have you. And next time, my next purchase is going to be I'm going to be much more invested in understanding what I'm purchasing and using it wisely and making sure it's something that is third party tested. So a lot of this information that you've given me today has been so helpful. And then the other part of it is just the red light sauna experience. I just want to kind of circle back around to that because I do that and I do enjoy it because when I go in, it really is an experience. I mean, I have beautiful music playing. One time I had birds and things singing and spring in the middle of winter, and it was lovely. Just want to make sure, that I'm clarifying because your clarity on the matter is huge. Maybe it's not giving me, from what I'm hearing from you, right, the benefits I had hoped for, but is there any benefit at all? And certainly there's no harm to it, right? Being in a hot sauna at 130 to 140 degrees and experiencing the red light.
No harm whatsoever. And as you were talking, it's like I could argue on your behalf or people using red light therapy in the sauna's behalf that your eyes are still visually picking up that red light. And like I was talking about before, that's incredibly important because there's a lot of downstream effects from your eyes perceiving that. It goes into your brain. And again, those couple of things in there that send messages to your body. So that's still going to happen, in my understanding. Like your eyes are still going to perceive the light. Um, and again, that's why I'm wearing these, is just because my eyes are going to perceive whatever light's going into them. So regardless of the heat, your eyes are still going to pick up that red light. You could argue there's going to be positive benefits from that. Even like if there's like the green light or the blue light or the amber light. I know some of the saunas like have a cycle of different lights.
Mhm.
Your eyes perceiving that, I think, will still lead to some type of a benefit because visual or anything your eyes pick up visually, there's going to be an effect to your brain and then downstream effects from that. So I would still argue the red light could have some type of a benefit internally that we need studied. So I think what Dr. Irani is talking about is like if you're doing red light therapy for the skin or for treating the muscles or for treating like, certain things, it's not going to have, it's going to be inhibited by the heat. But I think your eyes still picking it up would be a benefit.
That is so fascinating. So another part of that, two questions. First, um, just the whole looking at the red light. I've heard it said that, and you've just clarified this, that it's actually good for us to look at red light. It's not like we're looking at the sun, and there's all sorts of what have been called miraculous benefits for that. And then the second part of it, my question is, I just want to not forget to ask you, what about the other lights that are incorporated in? Like when you go into a sauna experience, then you can do the red light, and then subsequently, or beside that, there's another light. So green is for this, yellow is for that, orange, purple, blue, for example. Are there benefits to any of those lights?
Well, of course, Janet. Well, maybe not, of course, maybe it's not obvious, but just think about the sunlight. The sunlight is called full spectrum light. It contains all visible light within it, and it includes some UV, which is on the far left side of the spectrum, which is invisible, and it also includes, and it predominantly includes infrared light. And there's three types of infrared. There's infrared, near infrared, mid infrared, far infrared. And in saunas, it's predominantly mid and far, which are longer wavelengths. They penetrate deeper. That's why you get those that deep detox symptoms and all that, or benefits, not symptoms. But so yes, and that's a whole other. I mean, that's a whole other conversation as far as like what are the benefits of amber light? What are the benefits of green light and violet light and blue light? The gentleman I was speaking about today, who I alluded to earlier up in Canada, who has a huge clinic. What is his name? He's going to be on my podcast soon because we had just had such a great conversation, and he actually shadowed Dr. Michael Hamblin for hundreds of hours, he said. And again, Michael Hamblin from Harvard. So he had a lot of interesting input and just expertise and learning from Dr. Hamblin. But anyway, Josh, I believe, up in Canada, huge clinic, I think just north of Victoria, one of the bigger ones in the world, he said. But he was telling me that his clients who are terribly sick or terribly not doing well from a health perspective, when exposed to green light, we're having some miraculous results. I think that's also in combination with the red light because he's doing red light everything. But he was saying the green light had this profound effect for people that were uh, ungodly sick. So to answer your question indirectly, yeah, there's benefits, and that's just one anecdote I can speak of. But another one is in a recent solo episode I did a couple weeks ago for my podcast. Um, I talked about a piece of research that looked at violet photobiomodulation for depression, and the results were amazing. So, for whatever reason, the violet light had some positive. It kind of went through like how it helped serotonin, dopamine, um, and again, it's your eyes perceiving that, sending signals to the hypothalamus, thalamus, the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, and all of the signals they send out based on what they're seeing through the eye. So for whatever reason, violet light had a very profound effect for depression. I think amber light, if I'm not mistaken, has some great anti-inflammatory, maybe skin conditions. I don't remember specifically, but yes, like every spectra of light, and spectra is orange, and then red, and then green. That's what spectra means. For example, the spectra of red is 600 to 700 nanometers. And so each color has its own range of nanometers that it lives within. And that's all light is it's a frequency. That's what the nanometer is. Um, so anyway, yes. And then as we know, we talked about blue light and its negative effects, but that's because the blue light in these screens are such a narrow band of that blue light, and it's so powerful, it's so inhuman, or it's so um, it's not coherent with our biology because the blue light we get in the sun is a much lower level. Secondarily, the blue light from the sun is balanced out by that beautiful red light. So when we're getting that blue light from the sun, it's not just focal blue light at a very high level. And to kind of bring this full circle, the blue light that you're talking about that has the skin health benefits, like the antibacterial benefits, I mean, that's another way that a different type of visible light is beneficial is that beautiful blue light. You put that on your skin. That's amazing for different types of acnes and different bacterial situations on your skin. So yeah, I think that's a whole other, and this guy up in Canada, that's really where he wants to start taking some of his research and his what he's learning with all of his clients is more of a full photonic spectrum versus just being so myopic, I suppose, with red light therapy. As powerful as red light therapy is, we're probably missing a large potential with all these different colors of light, so to speak.
Well, I just think all of that information is so helpful. And I asked, I think, a lot of very rookie questions when it comes to red light and lights, because I'm just beginning to understand it. I've always celebrated color, obviously, hence the name of the
Yes.
podcast. And knowing that just, gosh, can you imagine a world that was monotone? There's just so much to it. And I've been doing a lot of investigation into research into frequencies and just the frequencies of clothing and all of the things that we need to be fully aware of to stay at our optimal health. So I love what you brought in about the sauna. I think I'll probably still do it. I do enjoy it. I do enjoy the whole part of it and how I feel afterward. And I love the fact that different lights can come in and be incorporated. So that was very exciting too. Well, I'm going to let you go. I have just, like I said, so many questions, but so many have been answered today for you and through you, that is. And I hope that maybe we can get together again on the podcast and we can talk some more about it because you're a wealth of information. And I know you've given a lot of information to people to chew on, to think about for a while. Before I let you go, is there anything else you want to leave my perhaps newly educated audience with?
Yeah, just dig a little deeper into the story about mitochondria or get mitochondria curious because that is really based on what I've learned and read over the years, and I'm a voracious learner. Um, it has led me to the story of mitochondria, and I believe fervently that's the answer to a lot of modern diseases. So anything you can do to improve mitochondrial function, um, and that's where I coined the term the mitochondrial triad based on what I've been learning. The three most effective ways, I believe, effective and efficacious ways to improve mitochondrial function as quickly as possible is red light therapy, then methylene blue, and then carbon 60. So maybe in a subsequent podcast, Janet, we could talk about methylene blue and C60 and their impact on the mitochondria. But even just from Jump Street, red light therapy's impact on the mitochondria. Hopefully that was conveyed today. I hope I didn't get too sciencey, although I'm guessing I did. And I hope I didn't scare people away from red light therapy with all that talk about the protocols and the third party testing. I'm just trying to paint a picture of, because I understand and I have compassion and empathy for someone just getting into the red light therapy space and you're Googling your chat GPT and you're trying to figure out what's up and down and left and right because there's massive marketeering, there's a lot of misinformation. So it's tough and it can be exhausting and, almost like paralysis by analysis once you start like trying to figure out who has you get what I'm saying, but get mitochondrial curious, look into red light therapy, try it because a lot of these companies, Biolight included, have 60-day trials. So try a device, give it a couple of months. If it just doesn't fit you and your lifestyle or you just don't see results, then you can send it back and there's no love lost. So I think it's just worth trying at the end of the day. And I think a lot of people have pretty stupendous results.
I agree. That's great advice, Mike. I will just say that that has been my experience. I've not been doing it for very long, but on one occasion I was in with my daughter and we did the red light and she said, "Oh, let's do blue along with it just enhance our skin." And there was something about that combination and that process that literally later on I just thought, I have so much energy. I don't even know what to do with myself. I don't even need to drink coffee. It was unbelievable. And I told her later, I said, I hope I can go to sleep. She goes, "Oh, yeah, you'll fall asleep. It'll be fine." And I did. And I had a great night's
Yeah.
sleep. So I just think until someone experiences it themselves, they're really just not going to know. And so it's just putting one foot out there and another in front of the next one. I mean, one foot in front of the other is my point, and just going along and trying to determine what works for the individual. And I would love to have you back on because there is more. And no, you didn't get too sciencey for me. I always did really well in science. I love science. I don't think we got deep enough, but thank you so much for your time today, Mike. I really appreciate it. And before I let you go, what is the name of your podcast so people can listen?
Yeah, it's called the Red Light Report. So part of it is solo episodes where I talk about research or books or things that I've recently read that I want to share that are relevant. And then I bring on various like biohacking, anti-aging, longevity, health wellness experts, and we have fun conversations. Sometimes centered around red light therapy, but also we kind of just branch out and talk about other things around wellness and longevity. So um, join me there. Follow me on Instagram at Dr. Mike Belkowski because I'm my hope, Janet, and I've been saying this for a while, but I want to be in a position where I have more time and energy because I have so much content I want to put out, and it'll be centric around mitochondrial function in all these different ways because I get inundated by N NIH or PubMed with all of this research on a daily basis, both in red light therapy and methylene blue and just mitochondria and all these things and how they affect the mitochondria. So like I have so much information I want to get out there because again, I think mitochondria is kind of the future. It's gotten more and more popular even in the last handful of years, but I think we're going to see this exponential rise in interest in the mitochondria. So I want to be able to provide people with this information, the most up to date research and information, and of course applicability. Like, okay, I've learned all this cool science stuff, but like, how can I apply it to my life for better? So that's what I'm looking to do in the social media world going forward.
Great. Well, let's connect again. And I appreciate your time today. And the rest of you, just thanks for joining in. I hope that you'll consider red light therapy and other light therapy and tuning into Mike's podcast. So until next time, we'll see you. Thanks for joining us on Color Speak. It's making me go through a few steps to stop the recording today. Okay, bye.